Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the latest exclusive interview on Breaking the Lines. I am here today with the author of a very interesting new book about Brentford, just a bus stop in Hounslow, by our friend Greville here. How are you doing today, Greville?
Hi, Zach. It's good to be here with you, and hi to all your listeners. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here. Let's talk a little bit about the title of this book, because just a bus stop in Hounslow, it almost reminds me of the phrase, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. QPR fans uh, have basically called Brentford just a bus stop in Hounslow, calling them a small club. Brentford, it seems like they have almost made that into a rallying cry, a motto, an underdog mantra for them. Talk to me a little bit about the title behind this book.
Well, I was looking for a title for the book, and then it came to me in a blinding flash of revelation. In that Brentford have always been the underdog, they've always been disregarded, they've always been denigrated. I'm sure most of your viewers, your listeners, are in America, but there's an area in Essex called Brentwood, so people will call Brentford Brentwood, generally deliberately, or Brentford Nylons, which was a big advertising campaign from a local company. So, we have a massive rivalry with Queen's Park Rangers. We're only about 4 miles away from each other. We don't like each other for reasons I don't need to go into in great detail now, apart from they tried to buy us and kill us in 1967. So, whenever we go there, it's a bit lively. And they started singing at us about 3 years ago. You're just a bus stop in Hounslow. Hounslow is just down the road from Brentford. And it was quite clever. And we actually thought about it and said, yeah, we are just a bus stop in Hounslow. And we've thrown it back at them. And it's taken off. And Thomas Frank, our head coach, he now uses it all the time. And it's just to symbolise that we are punching well above our weight. We are the underdog, as I've said. And we're doing an awful lot with not very much. Thank you, QPR.
You mentioned QPR trying to buy them in 1967. I really would like to discuss that story, but also, your book starting off in the present day, but then quickly going to 1935, the last time that Brentford had reached promotion. So it is a very good, I think, chronological structure in this book to discuss, the present, past, and future of Brentford. Really good book, definitely worth checking out. Let's talk a little bit about Brentford's start to life as a club, earning promotion, getting relegated in the 40s, and walk me through a little bit of those tough predicaments as we mentioned with QPR. What have been the closest calls that this club has had in their existence as a club?
There've been tons of close calls when the club's almost gone out of existence. The most recent was probably about 15 years ago, when it was only through fans putting coins in buckets outside the ground before games that kept us going. And the club was owned by the fans' trust, Bees United. Queen's Park Rangers, who were on the up at the time, liked our ground, Griffin Park. It was better than Loftus Road. So in 1967, aided and abetted by an awful chairman that we had, the late and very unlamented Jack Dunnett, tried to buy the club, basically, and they would have played at Griffin Park, and we would have gone out of existence. It was a merger, but really it was a attempted murder, really. So over the years, Brentford have oscillated between generally the fourth and the third tier of football. Always one of the smaller clubs, always strapped for cash. They had some halcyon days in the mid-30s when they rose from the third division to the first. The first division is what is now the Premier League, of course. And in the late 30s, under a guy called Harry Curtis, who was an incredible manager, they were one of the best clubs in the division. Never won anything, but finished in the top half most seasons. Finished fifth once a year. Got to the sixth round of the cup. The war destroyed everything. Players got old together, and because of the blitz and the bombing, housing was in short supply, so they couldn't sign players. So they had a very old, aging team and got relegated. And they were the first team to ever top the first division and be bottom of the fourth division. So they did that in 1973, I think it was, 74. And really, over the years, we've just sort of stabilised, kept going, been on life support, in intensive care. And just in the last 12 years, as I said, as I outline in the book, in 2009, we were in the fourth division. It's probably called something else, but it was the fourth tier of English football. 12 years later, we were promoted to the Premier League. And, as I said, it was 31,449 days since Brentford last won promotion to that league. So it's been an incredible journey. And it's last season was a fantastic season. I wanted to chronicle it. I've written a few books before. Just in case anyone wants to buy the book, my name is Greville Waterman, and it's called Just a Bus Stop in Hounslow. It's on Amazon UK, Amazon.com as well, as a Kindle and as a book. That's enough of the sales talk. But I just followed the club all through last season. I went to most of the games, home and away. The club embraced it. They let me in. They've been very secretive for all sorts of reasons because of their IP and how they function through analysis and statistics. But they sort of lifted the curtain a little bit. I talked to all the major players on and off the pitch. And what I tried to do was not just write a series of match reports, because that's boring, but I wanted to put things into context. And it was someone far cleverer than me that said, to know your future, you've first got to know your past. So I was trying to relate everything that's happened today to what happened in the past and how we've progressed since then. And suddenly I had 150,000 words and 400 pages written. And it's out there and it's doing very well. Thank you.
To know your future, you've got to know your past. I love that phrase. Going back to your past, that's a phenomenal detail, talking about how World War II affected the club. Brentford, though, obviously ending that drought in 2021, earning promotion. But for a few years prior to that, they had really enjoyed some success, getting to the championship with a statistical, data-heavy model. Curious, was there any eureka moment where you started feeling like things are really changing? This is not the Brentford of my childhood. This is a team that could challenge to do big things. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, the turning point was the arrival of Matthew Benham, who was firstly the mystery investor who no one knew about. He was putting money into the club. But he took over the club eventually in 2012, having been behind the scenes before that. And since then, the club has just been run brilliantly. He has very bright, intelligent people running the club. There is a total sense of unity and togetherness. Everyone talks to each other. Everyone's on the same page. Everyone knows their preset objectives. There is an incredible sense of team spirit. And the fact that we've done so well, success begets success. There is a growing confidence there. But there's also a great sense of humility as well, in that we know from whence we came and how easy it will be to return there. So we don't take anything for granted. There's no sense of hubris. We just carry on working very, very hard and very, very smart. And the success was founded initially on data analysis, on identifying new, emerging, young talent that had escaped attention elsewhere, and basically buying low, honing, developing, nurturing from within with very, very good coaching, personal attention, and selling very, very high. And the club made an awful lot of money in the transfer market through doing this, and that helped win promotion. About 4 years ago, they realised that the Championship is an incredibly tough league. It's relentless. You play 46 games. You're playing twice a week, pretty much every week. after COVID, you were playing 3 times a week. So they realised they couldn't just do it on young players. So they brought in some more experienced players as well, and that blend has worked really well. But it's all about playing for the team. It's a sense of unity and togetherness, great coaching, good players, and everyone knowing what their job is.
You mentioned, bringing in experienced players. I do feel like for the first few years that I was paying attention to Brentford when they were in the Championship, I think that, whenever there's a team that's trying something new in fresh way, there's always going to be some critics, and I do feel like Brentford, there were some skeptics. Is this team going to be capable of lasting the distance in the playoff stage? Are they strong enough? Are they experienced enough to make that jump? Are they more than just a selling club? Curious, where did you stand on that criticism? And do you feel like that in any ways has shaped Brentford's ascent to the Premier League? I mean, I think that it's no coincidence that they are one of the most physically imposing teams in the Premier League. I think that physicality has definitely been a huge reason for their successful start to life back in the top flight. Curious, what did you make of that criticism?
I've got to remember all the questions you just asked me, but the first thing is playoffs. The playoffs were the brainchild of a former Brentford chairman, now deceased unfortunately, called Martin Lange. And it's ironic, deeply ironic, that Brentford failed 9 times out of 9 in the playoffs. So the first 9 times we got to the playoffs, from all different leagues, including twice to get to the Premier League, we blew it. The 10th time we actually did it. So that in itself is pretty good. Now, when we got promoted to the Championship in 2014, frankly, I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. I was so happy, having watched so much crud and rubbish over the years, to get to that exalted level of football, and I'd have taken that. But the first year we got to the playoffs, which was interesting. Then we stabilised, but we were for several years slight flat track bullies. We played lovely, attacking, beautiful football of the gods, but we had a soft underbelly, as you rightly said. We were always susceptible to sort of shithousery and teams that would try and kick us off the pitch. Teams that would nullify us, and fair enough, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And then we sort of compromised, and we brought in some height and some strength. So we've got like the Ethan Pinnocks, who's unfortunately injured, Christian Norgard, Pontus Jansson particularly, who provided some steel and some experience and can help guide the gifted youngsters to get over the line. Ivan Toney up front, he's no shrinking violet. Now, but the good thing about it is we have this much vaunted no dickheads policy. So, and it's serious. We don't sign fools. We don't sign idiots. That's not to say that every player is Gandhi. We're pretty nasty out there, but we don't cheat. We don't kick people off the ball. We don't punch players. We behave, but we play it hard. We play it tough. We play it pretty fair, and people behave off the pitch. You don't hear about the sort of things you hear about from other clubs. Please God, may that long survive. But we're not nice to play against, as Man United found on Saturday. You notice I've taken all this time to even mention that. I've managed to restrain myself. So it's all about planning. It's all about having a strategy and a structure and a policy. And the policy is to get good people working very, very hard. The manager has some very simple messages in that the team has to be incredibly fit. The team has to defend very, very well. The team has to be brilliant at set pieces. Those, and to be, as you keep saying, an asset to the Premier League. We want to be humble, but an asset to the Premier League. He had all these set phrases, And footballers like consistency and they like simple messages, and they get both from him.
I applaud your restraint in not mentioning the United result up until now. Brentford starting their new Premier League campaign with a 2-2 draw at the King Power Stadium against Leicester before following it up with a 4-0 victory against Eric Ten Hag's Manchester United. This was a humbling. 4 goals in 35 minutes. And Christian Eriksen, I think perhaps the most important player in getting Brentford out of their funk last season, obviously playing on the other side for Manchester United, being booed with every touch of the ball. Talk to me a little bit about this result. Where does it rank for you in your favorite moments of supporting Brentford? And curious, what did you make of the Eriksen reception?
Well, quite simply, it's the best result in our history. There you go. And that's about the third time I've said that in a year. Beating Arsenal on the first day of last season was the best result in our history. Beating Chelsea at 4-1 at Stamford Bridge in March, I think it was, or April, was the best result in our history. Humbling, as you so rightly said, Man United 4-0 has got to be the best result in our history. Please God, we have another 2 or 3 later on in the next few years. It was an incredible performance because we outfought and outthought them, and we outplayed them. We only had about 35% possession, but it's what you do with it. We were organised. We pressed them high. We went into a low block when necessary. We were relentless in not allowing them to play out from the back, which is what led to the second goal. We bullied them at set pieces. We gave them very, very few chances. David Raya didn't make a difficult save in the whole game. We basically declared at 4 at half-time. It was hot as hell out there. It was probably on 40 degrees on the pitch. So second half, we just played it around. It was lovely. And in itself, that was eye-opening because we had the confidence to play with the ball and get them chasing shadows. Not that they wanted to do much chasing at all. They were a disgrace. As far as Christian Eriksen goes, there's an easy narrative that it's quite facile and easy to get into, which was he saved us. Yeah, we were going through a hard time, but we were going through a hard time early last year because we were riddled with injuries and COVID. We had the smallest squad in the Premier League. We had the lowest wage bill in the Premier League. We had the lowest attendances in the Premier League. We had the least experience in the Premier League. Not one of our players had started a Premier League game at the beginning of last season. And by the way, I think 9 of them played on Saturday. So we've kept consistency of selection. So I think 9 of them have survived a year in the Premier League. And that's unheard of. Why, if things work, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, as far as Christian Eriksen is concerned, of course signing him was a massive boost and fillip. But again, it was a fantastic Brentford signing. We had to work so hard for that signing. We had to do so much due diligence. We had to really, really go the extra mile where no one else could really be bothered. And then, of course, people were saying, well, if he does well at Brentford, we'll sign him. Ridiculous. So we go all the hard yards. They get him. Well, to be honest, that's actually what's happened. He was incredible for us, both on and off the pitch. On the pitch, he has such vision. He's a world-class player, and he's the first world-class player ever to play for us. And of course, there was a massive difference between him and the rest of the team. We have good players. They have, you don't denigrate our players. They are very, very good Premier League players. But there is a gulf between that and a player of the ilk of Christian Eriksen. He slowed us down. He calmed us down. He enabled us to have more confidence on the ball. He was brilliant. He saw things before they happened. We hoped he would stay. We prayed he would stay. We made him the best offer in our history to stay. We thought he would stay. It made sense. There was a colony of Danes and Scandinavians at the club. They embraced him and made him and his family welcome at a time when he needed this. we were good for him as he was good for us. He wanted to make sure he's fit to play for Denmark in the forthcoming World Cup. He decided he could do better elsewhere. I think there are probably 200,000 reasons a week why he's gone somewhere else. We made him the best offer in our history. It wasn't enough. Were we upset? Yes, we were upset. It took a long time to make the decision. Whether the communication between him and us was of the best, who knows? One hears conflicting stories. We wish him well. I can understand why a few people booed him. That's just the way of the world. But he was a massive influence, but he wasn't the only influence, because we lost 7 games out of 8, but in most of those games we were playing well. And that's another thing. A Brentford manager will never lose his job for losing games. He'll lose his job if the performances are poor. Now, that might sound madness, but think about it. Thomas Frank lost 8 of his first 10 matches as Brentford head coach. Was he fired? No. He wasn't fired because he was changing things and you could see what he was trying to do. We were missing key players like Christoph Ayer, the goalkeeper, David Raya, who's an incredible goalkeeper. And he's actually our first line of attack. So they were missing. They came back at about the same time as Eriksson. So there were several reasons why he helped us recover. And we had an incredible record in the run-in last season. Do I wish he was still with us? Of course. Can we cope without him? Well, so far we have. And it's quite funny that we've just signed, we won't call him the new Christian Eriksen because that's, again, trite. But Mikkel Damsgaard, he's the guy that scored an incredible free kick goal for Denmark against England in the Euros 2 years ago. And again, typical Brentford signing. He's had issues and fitness problems. We're taking a risk. We're taking a gamble. The club is run by gamblers. Remember that. Smart odds is, it provides odds on sports events, football events. Finds the edge. We try and find the edge. And hopefully Damsgaard will be the same. It might be in a year we say we're really happy that Christian Eriksen left us because Damsgaard has taken over the mantle. Who knows? Well, I wish him well. He was wonderful to watch. He made me very proud to see him because it used to be that we signed rejects, has-beens, never-weres, people on their way to the glue factory, basically, or to non-league. And they did their best. And to see us now playing against the best clubs in the country and giving them a good game, not necessarily winning, we're probably going to lose more than we win, but we deserve to be in this division. We fought hard to get there. We'll fight even harder to stay there.
Brentford bringing in Kane Lewis-Potter from Hull City, Aaron Hickey from Bologna, Mikkel Damsgaard from Sampdoria, all 22 or younger, as well as Burnley center back Ben Mee and Lazio goalkeeper Thomas Strakosha. Despite Eriksen going to Old Trafford, things are definitely looking bright for the Bees. And I think that one of the reasons why I'm expecting another comfortable season for Brentford, I'm not going to say top half finish, but I do think that they will comfortably avoid the drop. Famous last words, but I'll be cheering for them to stay in the top flight. But I think that one of the reasons for my optimism is Thomas Frank. For me, he is the most important man in the building. Brentford, part of being a bus stop in Hounslow, part of having this plucky, data-driven approach is losing not just key players, but also managers. Dean Smith going to Aston Villa in 2018 and being replaced by Thomas Frank. As you mentioned, had a rough start, but ended up delivering them to the promised land. Talk to me a little bit about Frank's impact at the club, and are there any aspects that you think have separated him from any other Brentford manager in your history of supporting the club?
Well, Harry Curtis, the sainted Harry Curtis from the mid-30s, he took us up 2 divisions. And obviously way before anyone's time. But Thomas Frank has joined him as the only manager to take us to the top flight. He is A very, very nice man. I mean, that sounds, again, silly, but I've met him many times. And he just is interested and interesting. You meet him, you are the only person in the room. He's not looking over his shoulder for someone more important. He's not looking at his watch. He's not playing with his phone. He listens to you and he gives you full attention and he responds accordingly. He's a very, very good coach. He's a brilliant man manager and communicator. He cares. Now, I wouldn't cross him. He's got a temper, and I've seen that happen, but it takes a lot. Sergi Canos, who is one of our longest-serving players and loved by everyone at the club, Sergi Canos is like a Labrador. He runs around with enthusiasm and passion and skill. He came on as a substitute in the last game of the season against Leeds. We were very poor. The season was over for us, although we could have relegated Leeds, which is upsetting. It would have been lovely to have done that. And he came on, and we were down to 10 men because of substitutions and injury. He scored a brilliant headed equaliser with 10 minutes to go, and the impetus was with us. He then took his shirt off and paraded round in his sports bra, with monitoring equipment, and got rightly booked, and then was sent off within 30 seconds because Leeds came at us and he tripped Rafinha, who's a very tricky win. Now, I met Thomas on the Tuesday after the Sunday game, and he was steaming mad with Sergi Canos. I won't use the word that was used to describe him, and he loves Sergi Canos, but his behaviour was unprofessional, and things like that annoy and upset him because of the high standards in the club. The players respect and love him. Now, one of the first things I said to him when I met him for the last interview, I said to him, well, all the players call you Thomas. And he looked at me bemused and said, well, that's my name. He said, yeah, but in football that's not done, because traditionally in football there's this feudalism, and the manager is the boss or gaffer or some other ridiculous sort of old-fashioned term. And he said, no, Thomas, I don't care. I'm Thomas, that's my name. And I think that makes them respect him even more. He said, Ivan Toney does call me gaffer because he's a bit old school. But all the rest call him Thomas. But they don't get away with anything. And he has also a very, very strong coaching team around him. So, we've got Brian Remo, who coaches the defence. We've got Kevin O'Connor and a new guy called Justin Cochran, who is brilliant. We just got him. He was head of the academy at Manchester United. They do the strikers. It works. It's all been thought through. I lie awake at night, well, figuratively anyway, worrying that one day we'll lose Thomas Frank. We probably will one day, but it won't be for anyone other than a top 6 team or an international team, more likely. Because you see, if you look at it his way, he's got an incredibly good job. He's supported. He has like-minded people who think in the same way, but challenge each other. There is mutual respect. There are high expectations, but not as high as the poor sod at Manchester United. And also, he knows that for him to get sacked, he has to really fail. And, he survived losing 8 out of 10 for very good reasons. If Brentford lost their next 10 games, there is no way that Thomas Frank would be fired. It's not going to happen, please God. I did ask him what would happen if they lost 5 in a row. This was just before the Arsenal game. And he said, never happen. We're too organised, we're too good. And at the end of the season, he said to me, it did happen, didn't it? And it did, because the Premier League is unforgiving and we had injuries and COVID. But as long as the performances remain of a high quality and standard, he's safe. He probably has the safest job in English football.
It seems so simple, something like having the players call you Thomas instead of Gaffer. But it's one thing that, look around England's professional football clubs, I'd be curious to see how many other clubs have something similar. And I think, as you mentioned, it induces that gentleman-like code of ethics that Brentford are trying to instill. I think that's really interesting. Another thing that Brentford, have been doing that is fairly cutting edge and modern is this data analysis. Scouting for a lot of young players across Europe, a lot in Scandinavia, a lot in France, and buying them for low fees, selling them for hefty profits, developing them, and as you mentioned, the betting background I think has definitely paid dividends for the Bees in that respect. Let's delve a little deeper and a little more specific into the intricacies of this, data analysis. What have been the biggest beneficiaries, would you say, in terms of the players, and just how has Matthew Benham's background shaped their approach?
Well, because of the company he runs, Smart Odds, he has watchers who watch pretty much any game around the world and are analysing the quality of the players. So he has this League of Justice that rates the teams on their performances rather than on points. Now, that was derided and mocked by everyone until suddenly we did well in the Premier League, and suddenly people think, actually, they're not so stupid, these people at Brentford. They're actually very, very sensible. He also...
No worries.
He also has stats that you wouldn't believe about players that they have collected for themselves. I hope that... I'll call you back. Apologies. Can you edit that a bit out?
Yeah, I will.
All right. So he has and that data analysis from all around the world, stats of the quality that most other clubs haven't got. That has enabled him to identify players of immense potential around the world. Now, the trouble is, with Brexit, it's now harder and harder to bring them into this country unless they are accredited full internationals. So two of our biggest successes were Neil Maupay and Saïd Benrahma, who we signed from lower division football in France. And, we sold, we made about 25 million on both of them. Now, neither of those players would qualify to come to the UK anymore. So that means that we've got to prospect from further afield. We've got to prospect from the lower divisions in the UK, where, of course, you spend more money. So it's harder and harder to do that. And also, in the past, we were buying to sell. We haven't sold a player of any ilk, we just sold Marcus Forss for about £3 million. Good player, couldn't quite do it yet in the Premier League. But we haven't had a big sale yet for a couple of years. So in the past, I think Ollie Watkins was probably the last big sale. Now, we signed him for £1.8 million, and by the time it's finished, we'll have got £33 million for him. That's what we've been doing. Now, lately, we've been signing to keep rather than to sell. Now, had we been relegated last season, which could have happened, had we lost the playoff final to Swansea in May 2021, then there would have been an exodus. We would have made over 100 million through selling Christian Norgard, through selling Rico Henry, through selling Ivan Toney, through selling Brian Mbeumo, perhaps. We'd have made a fortune, and then we'd have started again. So at the moment, we're buying to keep rather than buying to sell. It might be in January that we sell somebody, and certainly within the year, we will have to sell David Raya if he doesn't sign a new contract, which, frankly, if I was David Raya, I probably wouldn't sign a new contract either, because, the world's his oyster. He's certainly got a good gig at Brentford, but I'm sure he might look at Manchester United and say, you know what, I've replaced David De Gea in the Spanish squad, perhaps I could replace him at Old Trafford. Mind you, I might be crazy to want to go there. Perhaps he might want to go and sign for Real Madrid back home. Who knows? Please God, he'll sign a new contract at Brentford, but there are doubts. So he will probably go, but we've already replaced him. we signed Strakosha from Lazio, very good goalkeeper. Now, he wouldn't have come here unless he was on, well, there's no such thing in football as a promise, but he's obviously been led to believe that he'll get plenty of football, which in a way is slightly worrying because we'd love to keep Raya, but who knows? But we have the replacement in the building already. So it's all about planning. It's all about preparation. It's all about knowledge. It's all about making calm, rational decisions and sticking to them. You don't change your mind because you lost 3 games in a row. You will revert to the mean if you're doing the right thing. So it's about being phlegmatic, sticking to your guns. Of course, if something eventually carries on not working, like he's changed formation a couple of times. He's changed from 4-3-3 to 3-4-3 to 3-5-2, back to 4-3-3. And at the moment, because we have a strong squad with numbers, it's impossible to actually say what the best team is. I think it will be a best team for every game. So we played 4-3-3, 3-5-2, and 3-4-3 at Leicester City. We played 3-5-2 against Manchester United. We've got Fulham away on Saturday. That will be probably a tougher game than Man United because of history between the clubs. Who knows whether we'll revert to 4-3-3 or whether we'll stick with 3-5-2. No idea. We'll probably play both.
One of the things about, switching to a buy-to-keep model is prioritizing these younger stars who are looking for a shot in the Premier League, as I think opposed to more experienced players like Christian Eriksen, who are already big-name stars. It'll be interesting to see, what's the next big-name player that Brentford can attract. Moreover, do they want to attract? Do they want to focus on shelling out a lot of money for these U23 players like Damsgaard, like Hickey? I think that's one thing that's really intriguing about their model. Curious, though, is there one player in the squad that you are worried about in terms of a potential departure besides David Raya?
But just going back to the first point, if you want to, the transfer fees are crazy. Nottingham Forest and Newcastle, have done their best to inflate the market. If you want to buy an experienced Premier League ready player that's done it and got the T-shirt, you might be paying 50-60 million. Now, we're not in that market. We only paid £1 million for the first time in 2014. Our record signing up till a year or so ago was £5 million for Brian Mbeumo. Now, obviously, we smashed it last year with Frank Onyeka and Christopher Ayer and also Visser. And this season, we've broken it 3 times already with Hickey, Lewis Potter, and now Damsgaard. I think actually Damsgaard, is less than Lewis Potter and Hickey. Now, to me, it's far better to pay 10 to 14 million. And this is me talking about Brentford spending 10 to 14 million when we were shaking buckets 15 years ago. It's ridiculous. A fanzine, Brentford fanzine, paid for us to sign a player. The Brentford Lifeline Society paid for us to sign a player. And we're talking about £2,500. That was big money. So what we're doing now is boggling. And I would rather pay that sort of money, if we have to spend that sort of money, for a Hickey or a Lewis Potter or a Damsgaard, because, they're 19, 20, 22. They can only get better. Hickey could be a £40 million player in a year. Lewis Potter could be a £50 million. Damsgaard could be £100 million. Who knows? Hopefully, they'll develop with us and stick with us. But we have to be open to the reality and say that initially we used to sell to the Championship. Then we started selling to the lower Premiership teams. Now, if I was a non-top 5 Premier League team, I would be very interested in Rico Henry. I'd be very interested in David Raya. I'd be potentially interested in Vitaly Janelt in midfield. maybe Ethan Pinnock if we can get him fit again. I would certainly be interested in Brian Ugumo and Ivan Toney, and I would be looking with great interest at the 3 new signings. So basically, we have probably 6 or 7, 8 players who are coveted by good teams, and it might be that one or more of them go in the next year. Who knows?
It's part of that humility that comes from being just a bus stop in Hounslow. Always willing to acknowledge that possibility and always willing to work 1 or 2 steps ahead. I think that other teams such as Brighton, for example, have done a good job of working 1 step ahead and preparing for these departures. And I think that Brentford, with their model of hard work and humility under both Matthew Benjamin and Thomas Frank, I do think they are destined for good things this season. Greville Waterman, absolute pleasure speaking with you, sir. Just any other bits you want to add about your book, Just a Bus Stop in Hounslow?
Well, it was a work of love, but I've tried to be objective. I've tried to be critical. Not that there's much to be critical about. The club is so well run. It's not to say they don't make mistakes, and when they've made mistakes, I've hopefully pointed them out. The people at the club liked the book, which slightly worried me. But no, I don't think there are any hidden skeletons or bodies that are buried. I just tried to be fair and objective, give praise where merited, point out a few things that I think they could have done slightly better. I've tried to make it interesting. I've tried to make it a good read. I've tried to put in a few silly jokes in there because, I can see I have a sense of the ridiculous, and hopefully that comes over in the book. But it's a love affair, and it's a love letter. And I hope that not just Brentford fans, but I hope that football fans that are interested in a team that does it differently, and believe me, we do it differently to anyone else, will have a look at this book and hopefully buy it, leave me a review on Amazon. And as I said, everyone keeps saying, oh, we're looking forward to next year's one. No, I'm going to wait a bit. I am exhausted. It is like drawing blood. Anyone who's written the book will know it's hard work. So I'm taking a rest this year. If things go and last year was magic, coming into the Premier League, the new stadium, the bond and the connection. We haven't talked about that, but the bond and the connection between the team and the fans. They love each other. They feed off each other. And if you see at the end of the game, Hey Jude, free from desire, and the players all join in, it's lovely. It's a wonderful club. I'm proud to be a supporter of Brentford. And I want other people to share my pride and my joy in them. And hopefully this book, which, as I said, is available on Amazon, it's available at the Brentford Club shop, it's available at the publishers, hawksmoorpublishing.com, Just a Bus Stop in Hounslow by Greville Waterman. If you like it, let me know. If you don't like it, don't let me know. No, let me know. But more importantly, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Zach. And anytime you want me on to talk about British football, I would love to do it. And hopefully we could sign a player from the States as well. We've got lots of American Brentford fans. We haven't had a US player over since Mike Grella. We had Mike Grella about 4 or 5 years ago for a while. No, was it 4 or 5 years? No, about 10 years ago, before he came back to the States. But that's the only one I can think of in recent times. But anyway, thank you.
If you want to know about Brentford, Just a Bus Stop in Hounslow, delving into the past, present, future of the club. If you want to know your future, you got to know your past. Is that right?
That's the best thing. You got it right.
Got it right. Amazing. Fantastic speaking with you, Greville Waterman. Definitely make sure to check out this amazing book about